This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so in order to remind you what we are trying to start our DevSecOps journey. And in order to start the DevSecOps journey, we need to do threat modeling. That means we need to model the list of threats which you may have on your application, and coding standards. We need to decide the coding standards. Now, coding standards, for that, I will release one paper. And the reason is, uh, most of us are not a developer, then so it will be very difficult, you know, to understand each and every line. So what I will publish one paper, I'll share with you, which you can share or refer during the deciding the coding standard with the development team. So today I'm going to discuss about the threat model. Okay, so that is the sections which we are going to learn. So let's get started. So as part of this session, I'm going to teach you what is a threat model and why do we need it, and who should be doing it, and when we should start doing it. So these are the things which we can get started. So yeah, this thing is needed by everyone. In fact, if you see that, software developers should be involved in threat modeling, architect should be involved in threat modeling, and if you're a security operational or professional, then you should be doing that one. And we will also discuss about where to start and how do we reduce a risk for software security issues. And there are lots of numerous benefit what we have. Also, along with that, we'll also discuss how to do threat modeling. So some of the objective for this session is like, what is threat modeling, why should you why you should threat model, who should threat model, and when to start threat model. So threat modeling basically is systematically listing all potential ways how one can attack an application. Yes. So let's say you have applications, you may have applications, or you already have an applications, and you're going to list out all the possible ways in which the hacker will attack on your applications. It can be through the web servers, through the database server, through the application servers, through the browser, through the different protocol on your servers, through DDoS attack, and many other ways. So basically, you are going to list out all the potential ways. So in this way, if you want to if you want to develop a threat model, that means if you want to list out all the potential ways to get your to attack on an application, so you have to think in terms of hacking way. So you can start thinking about how can I hack this application, what are the ways which can be used for hacking this application. So that is all about the threat modeling, and which includes threat modeling includes systematic approach. It's not like you start jumping here and there and all. So there will be some list of activities which you need to first list it out, model it, and then see that can we reduce the surface of attack, can we avoid the surface of attack, and things like that. So you need to bring the systematic approach, and then on top of that you have to look at the attacks, sort of attack which you have it. You need to also define the probable threat scenarios, okay, and the list of threats. So that also is a part of threat modeling. So while working with the threat modeling, you have to have a holistic approach, and which including multiple model, multiple practices, procedures, multiple tools which you can use it, and things like that. So weaknesses. What is weaknesses? Something like you need to find out in your application. It can be a software defect, it can be a bug, or it can be a validation issue. So something like that, you have to find out the weakness. So these are the list of weaknesses of your applications which you need to list out as part of the threat modeling. You need to also find out the vulnerability, what kind of vulnerability which you may have in your applications. Again, remember that threat modeling typically we do at planning phase. Okay, so you may, what kind of weaknesses on vulnerability you may have in your applications, you have to again list out. Example, it can be email address field can be abused to insert SQL statement. So if you don't have a proper validations, maybe someone is inserting the SQL statement in your email ID, and uh, that is getting into the database, and basically that is uh, can do anything. Like that there are a lot of SQL statement can alter your database table column or structure of your schema. So it can be done. So you need to check that. So attack, you need to also list out which are the possible places where you may get attack. You may also have to list out all the threat actor who's going to get benefit from attacking this kind of applications, and the attack vector, that means you're going to check that how long they want to attack that. So from the front end to application to database, that you have to decide how deep they can attack. Threat modeling can also help you to list out the attack surface. Anything that can be obtained, used, or attacked by the threat actor, you should list out actually. You should also list out the risk. What about if this kind of attack will happen? What would be the impact and livelihood? So that is also you have to analyze it. So as per the Benjamin, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Okay, so you should start preparing, for the attack if you want to avoid the failure. So why threat modeling? So I think more or less we understand. Uh, we want to find out the architectural risk analysis. What is the flaws you have in the architecture? You want to do the proper source code analysis. You know that source code analysis is like a huge domain where you have thousands of rules. If you remember my SonarQube session, so you have thousands of rules, and which rule you are going to use it, uh, uh, that will be decided by the threat model. You can also, it will also help you to vulnerability scanning, which are the areas you should scan. It will also help you in terms of penetration testing. So these are the things you can do only if you have a threat model in place. And so while doing the penetration testing, vulnerability scanning, or any other areas, it will help you. Reason to use threat modeling: proactive approach. It is efficient. You are prioritizing the bugs and for better understanding. So in order to do the threat modeling during the planning phase, you need to collaborate actually. So you need to collaborate with the different teams, different individual stakeholders of the project, and you may have to check that which are the processes which is repeatable, and then list it out. You can also, through the threat modeling, you can also see the process output. You may have to develop a diagram. You may have to write a requirement, security requirement, non-requirement, list out the threats and vulnerabilities. So who should do the threat modeling? In fact, everyone in a team. So in DevSecOps team is all about the team actually. Remember, it's a one team. So architect, developer, tester, and security professionals, everyone should do the threat modeling. So who should threat model? So it depends on the organization sometime also, and so on. So when to perform the threat modeling? So as early as possible, and it should be done at the requirement phase, design phase, and so on. So these are the things which is important. Now, during the each sprint, you should also add, as if you're following this agile model, then during the each sprint, you should also add the threat models. If you're adding some code, what could be the threat model for the code? What is the security risk, vulnerabilities, point of area to attack, and these are the things you should also write it. Generate a separate security stories. That means while working in agile team, you should always have a separate security storage, so the values and the importance of these stories should not be lost in the bugs and feature development and so on early on in the process. Okay, so you should start the threat modeling again early in the development process, early in the design phases, early in the planning phases, and so on. So yeah, threat modeling is a process to find vulnerability early on. Proactive approach enhances application knowledge. The what, the who, and when should fit the organization and fit processes into the organizations. Okay, so now next things which we are going to talk about after understanding the introduction of threat modeling. Now we are going to choose the right approach for doing the threat modeling. So the in this session we are going to discuss about the approaches and the methodology, which are the things we are going to start to do the threat modeling. So approach, where to start, and methodology, the process itself. Okay, so approach. Okay, so methodologies are based on approach, and the approach can be asset centric. That means, are you trying to protect the asset, or attacker centric? Are you trying to avoid certain attackers, or application centric? Okay, so you need to find out an approach which you are focusing on. Are you focusing on a set? Are you focusing on attacker? Are you focusing on applications? So based on that you will define the threat model for assets, protecting the assets, threat model from the protecting for from certain kind of attackers, or threat model for safeguarding your application, and so on. So these are the approach which you have to define, and based on that methodology can be defined. So asset, attacker, application, always remember that while setting up the threat modeling. It's a document, actually you have to write it all the time. So you have to first define the approach and then methodology. Okay, are you all of you are understanding this process?
Yeah, Rajesh. Yes.
Yeah. So now, so what is
So,
a set
so environment data. So, like an existing environment, they probably have this in place, right? Oh,
asset? Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So what is a asset-centric approach? What is the attacker-centric approach? What is application-centric approach, and when to use which approach? So yeah, which team should be involved in it? So here, architect, interaction designer, front end, back end, and system admin for this one. So let's talk about the asset-centric approach. So asset-centric approach, let's say, put it in this way. Kurt Hasse is saying, if you don't know what to protect, how do you know you are protecting it? Very simple statement. If you don't know what to protect, so that's your asset, right? What you are trying to protect, you have to list down. You have to create a document which should say what are the things you are trying to protect. Okay, so scenario, it can be a server, and the server has email addresses, account credentials. So that is a kind of asset you have. So that's one of the asset centric approach. Now what you should do, so while creating a document for threat modeling, if you are focusing on asset centric approach, then create a list of assets. That's the first step. Draw assets, components, and data flows, and for each element check for the threats. That means we have a web server, we have an app server, you have a database server. What kind of threats you may have an app server? What kind of threats you may have a database server? Storage at what kind of threats you may have it? Compute, what kind of threats you may have? Email address, what kind of threats you may have it? So you have to decide that. Okay, for each and every elements you have to decide, check for the threats. Now there are certain advantages and disadvantages, always we have it in like this. So asset centric approach, we have a centered around assets. That means the advantage of is like is you are creating a entire threat model which is centered around the assets, focused towards the business impact, and well suited for risk assessment, and naturally fit for every projects and organization. Some of the disadvantage which we have is not center around the application. So again, for that we have to go for application centric approach. Mapping asset to the threat is difficult. Okay, So this is something. So now someone will ask you, hey, you want to use the asset centric approach. So what is the methodology you will follow? Methodology, okay, model. So then you can say, okay, we should use pasta. You can use strike. So these are the two methodology which is very popular for asset centric approach. Okay, and please remember that. Now this, what is pasta, what is strike, we'll discuss a little bit of in the next upcoming slides. But remember that if you want to decide the approach, and if you are asset centric approach, then which methodology you will use? Pasta and strike. Okay, will you remember this statement?
Yep.
Yeah, so now pasta also will discuss, and trike will also discuss in upcoming slides. Now second one is the attacker centric approach. In attacker centric approach, you have to create a list of threat actors, their motives, their means, and the opportunity what they get the advantage of it, and also create a list of threats. Okay, you need to have a proper documentations in a nice way. I'll tell you the methodology also in which you will write it, and so on. So now here you have a threat actor. It can be a competitor. Motive, it can be just one of the use cases. Motive, it can be, it's like getting your business. Financial and technical means may be limited, and opportunity exploiting vulnerabilities and stuff like that. So this is something which you have to do with actors centric approach. What is the advantage and disadvantage? So advantage, we have a mixed threat and attack visible. And movie plot threatening brainstorming is fun. That means when you have this kind of meeting, then one team will become a competitor, one team will become a savior, and then you'll think of it like, okay, if I'm at attacking position, what are the plots I may have it to get into the application, so whatever it is. And disadvantage, easy to miss technical threat, unrealistic threats, biased results, you may have it, a tracker thinking required, which is very impossible to get it. Let's say if you're working in Infosys, and if someone will say, hey, find out the ways to harm the Infosys, like your mind will not think of it sometime, because you are already, your mind is saying, hey, you're a part of it, you should not find a ways to destroy that. Your mind will always fight for it. Getting my points?
Yeah, Rajesh, makes sense.
Yeah, so now choose approach based on the skill set. Now, last one is application centric approach. Application centric approach, which is most of the team, if you look at this, they are doing it actually. So they focus on applications like database application, web application, app applications, and application for the user and stuff like that. So here, some of the model which is very popular for this application methodology, which is very popular for application centric approach, is stride. It's a very powerful and very popular model methodology which we have. Spoofing, we call it. I mean, stride we call it, and as for spoofing, T for tampering, R for repudiations, I for informational disclosure, D for denial of service, DDoS attack also you can say, and E for elevation of privileges. So this is the one popular model for applications threat model. So from applications to threat model, uh, here you can draw a diagram of the applications. For example, the data flow diagram, a DFD diagram you might have studied in colleges. After that, only the architect team or planning team uses that diagram. But you can get into that as well, because I know that some of you might not be practicing. But this threat modeling is done in the planning phase, so DFD is required for it. So you start designing the DFD, and you are going to list threats of each elements, which is for how can your application can get spoofed, tampered, damage the reputation, information disclosure, DDoS, elevation of privilege. So you're going to list out all this thing, and ops top 10 is also available, by the way. Ops top 10, ops means you can say it's like a community which govern and set out the policies and practices for security around the globe. So that is also, you can check it out, Ops Top 10. If you remember then the DevSecOps discussion, I discussed that one also. Rank threats using classification model. So here what you are going to do, here you are going to rank the list of threats based on their severity level. So I think this is where the tools are required, like a Sonar Cube is playing a very important role for it actually. So yes, application centric, if you are, Stride is one of the best way, and Ops Top 10 for each listing, you can get it from the internet also. So some of the advantage which we have is like a common understanding of application, spread of knowledge. Disadvantage we have a documents is necessary, difficult to see own vulnerabilities, threat may be sound abstract. So yeah, these are the teams which is involved in the application centric approach for doing the threat modeling, architect, interaction designer, front end, back end, and team, and system administrator. Now the question is some of the scenarios for choosing the right approach, whether it's application or attacker or the asset, which one. So this you can decide based on some of the things which is, you can say, end goal, generating a list of threats, asset centric approach, translations from asset to threat, quantifying risk of management, attacker centric approach, specialized knowledge necessary, makes which is a negative points actually, makes threat tangible, which is a positive. Application centric approach, it's a blind spots, and positive is most effective for application developer. So now, after understanding the approach, let's discuss about the methodology which you are going to use it. We discuss about the methodology, but also you need to find out which is the right methodology for it. So some of the methodology we discuss about PASTA. Initially, PASTA was undercoming which approach? Anyone? Which?
Asset
Asset, yes,
centric.
wonderful. Yes, yes. So these are the popular methodology which we have around the globe. So if you go, you'll have to study this one only. So we have PASTA, we have Microsoft Threat Modeling, we have Octave, you have Trike, you have Vast, you have Stride also, but this is the approach for applications centric. So it's not counted as a methodology, but you can say it's like a checklist or sort of it. So advantage and disadvantage for each, and how to choose and methodology. So yeah, comparing methodologies. So for that, threat modeling and risk analysis and threat analysis. So approaches covered asset centric, attacker centric, and application centric. So PASTA. So what is PASTA? PASTA, process for attack, simulation, and threat analysis. Okay, so you are trying to create a process where you are trying to create a simulations, and based on the simulation you are analyzing the threats. This is one of the methodology. There is a tools also involved in it. There's a practices also there, so we'll discuss of later in the session, later in the course. So asset centric approach, and 7 stages you have. Look at this here. These are the PASTA approach, PASTA process. So PASTA, which helps you to define business objective, which is again, remember that this is a set related. So define technical scope, decompose applications, means multiple, break it down the small pieces, analyze the threats, identify vulnerabilities, emulate attacks, perform impact analysis. So again, if you look at these 7 steps, it's looking very simple, but when you start doing it, it'll become a 500 pages of documents, by the way. Okay, so mind it here. So PASTA process is like, first divide all of your work into 7 bucket, and then start working on it accordingly. First objective, uh, technical scope, decompose application, analyze threats, identify vulnerabilities, enumerate attacks, perform impact analysis, and so on. Now, some of the key elements of the PASTA is, which is targeted towards the medium to large size companies. Okay, mature companies and having security knowledge. Uh, Executive sponsorship necessary. Uh, Iterative and maturing process, means this you have to keep doing it, and till it get mature, and it's always has to be a part of your SDLC cycle. Outcome is geared towards towards a management. So uh, this is some of the key elements. Now, advantage and disadvantage. So advantage, great for business integration, matured, well described process you find in the pasta, lots of documentation. I just said like a lot of documentation. I've seen the pasta documents, and you find like little lost after referring it. So again, over the period of time, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, if you look at this, that document will be in a size of 500 pages, and that is a well defined document for securing your applications. Tooling available. Disadvantage, specialized input necessary, time consuming. Yes, it'll take few years of time to implement it. Each step generate output. A lot of intermediate models are there which you can use in the pasta. Output depends on the dynamic input. Now there is one more modeling which we have, which is called Microsoft threat modeling. This is something, when you say Microsoft threat modeling, they recommend the strides. Okay, the one which I discussed earlier also during the application centric. So this model is very popular, by the way, better more than pasta. So this model, because it's applied, is used by Microsoft, and they have a greater documentations as well on their website. So threat modeling framework is a framework, sometimes incorrectly named STRIDE. STRIDE is a threat classification system. That means you classify the different kind of threats, which you put it in this framework. But you know what? Everyone says STRIDE Microsoft threat modeling is like that in a general day-to-day conversation. But STRIDE is not a methodology; it's a threat classification system. And Microsoft threat modeling is a framework. For example, if you want to correlate something, how do you say? Let's say Java is a language, and Spring Boot is a framework, correct? And PHP is a language. Laravel is a framework. Ruby is a language. Ruby on Rails is a framework. So same way, Microsoft modeling framework is a framework, and which create the which which helps you to create a threat model based on the STRIDE, and STRIDE is a threat classification system. Are you understanding, all of you?
Raj, initially when we were discussing about the three approaches, the asset centric, attacker centric, and application centric, that is where you mentioned that in asset centric, pasta and trike are the
No, no.
methodologies.
Oh, okay, okay. We got confused. Trike is a different one. Stride is a different one. Don't get
No,
confused.
understood. Yeah,
Trike
understood. Those are different methodologies. But again, when we were talking about application centric, you said OWASP top 10 and
and
Stride.
stride. Yes,
Yeah.
stride.
So Stride is a threat classification system, or is it a threat model approach methodology?
It's a see. That's what I said. People get confused, and people start saying stride is a methodology, but actually it's not a methodology. It
Okay.
is a way to classify the different threats. But this model is very this classification system will work in the Microsoft threat modeling framework.
Okay.
Okay, so now in a simple way we say, hey, application centric stride is a methodology. Simple way we say.
I see. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
So yeah, focuses on a technical risk, developer-driven, application-centric approach. Now, what you are going to do as part of the Microsoft threat modeling process, and which basically help you to implement the stride. So identify assets, create architecture overview, decompose application, identify threats, document threats, rate threats. Okay, so these are the phases you have to do, 7 phases in order to implement the Microsoft threat modeling process. Now, some of the key elements which you have in Microsoft threat modeling is targeted towards the development team, simple, lightweight, practical approach, plain language, widely adopted. So that's the reason I said this is the one of the modeling which is being used all around the globe. If you are focuses on application centric. Now, if you try to implement, then you have to use the stride way of classify all the threads, and that's what is stride. I'll discuss a little bit more about in upcoming slides. So advantage and disadvantage, easy to pick up. I mean, everyone start implementing the site itself. Easy to pick up, can be easily integrated in a SDLC cycle, very flexible. Disadvantage, more practical than academic. Okay, stride classification is redundant. That means there are lots of practices which has been used, and there's no standard for it. Does not factor in a business risk. Octave. So what is Octave? So Octave is one of the methodology which you can say which is operationally critical threat, asset and vulnerability evaluation. This is asset centric approach, by the way. Risk analysis framework evaluates organization with the different version of Octave, Octave X, and Octave X Allegro, and these are the different versions of practices which you have. So this is also is being used. Octave process, which includes established driver, profiling assets, identifying threats, and mitigate risk. These are the 4 areas you have to divide if you want to work on the Octave. Now, these all the templates you'll get on the internet, so don't worry about that. There's a wide range of templates is available, documents is available for the template, what you should do, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and so that's what doc and not PDF format, and you'll get it. So which are the key elements for Octave? Each version targets different organization, focuses on organizational risk, not technical risk, focuses on security approach, strategic issues, flexible and self-direction, and series of workflow required for implementing it. Some of the advantage which we have is improve risk-aware corporate culture, create organization-wide risk overview, in-depth, flexible. Disadvantage, large and complex, lot of paperwork and require investment. In fact, all of this model, if you see, there are lots of paperwork is there. So 500, 700 page will be minimum over the few years, and these pages has to be understood by the each developer and QA people in detail and during the design page. Trike, the one which we are discussing over the asset centric. So yes, methodology as well as tool. High level of automation are possible. This is asset centric approach. You have a tool for that also, which help you to implement the methodology, which is asset centric. Focus on defensive side. So for this model, for this track process, which includes model the system, identify the threats, investigate the threats, identify the mitigation, investigate the mitigation, and so on. So the key elements which we have for the trike is targeted towards the security auditing team, 3 models: requirement model, implementation model, and risk model. Advantage, automatically generate threats. This tool will automatically generate the threats. Consistent result, built-in tool is available. Disadvantage, does not scale it, not maintained, defunct, and unfinished. Bhast, there's a one more which is for used for the by the agile team and for the process flow diagram. For the uses the process flow diagram. So here Bhast, visual agile simple threat model, which has 2 types: application threat model, operation threat model. Uses the process flow diagram for implementing this methodology. Now, some of the key element targeted towards agile companies and scalable. So if you are agile team, Scrum, Kanban, and all, most of the time you see that if they want to implement some of the model for threat, then they will start with a Vast, they will migrate to strides, and if you're from the management side, then you will think about the trike and so on. So different people like different model. Some of the advantage: flexible, scalable, process flow diagram might be easier. Disadvantage: not an open methodology, no documentation or guidance is available for this. So some of the summaries here: best methodology depends on the team, organization, goal. Asset centric, very popular, Pasta. Application centric, Microsoft. Threat modeling, in which you are going to use stride as a, for what? Stride as a
Threat classification.
threat classifications. Yeah, so choose methodology based on the team, organization, and objective. There is no clear-cut formula like you have to do this or that. It depends on your requirements. Okay, so now threat modeling in practice. Okay, so how do we use the threat modeling in real time? So for that, uh, the objective for this discussion is perform Microsoft threat modeling process. Okay, so there's one of the model which is very popular, which is strides, and draw the data flow diagram. That is something which you have to do. Mind it, this is a more or less is a work in form of documentation. So this is something which you have to do that. So generic threat modeling process: set scope, analyze target, identify targets, and rate the threats. So this is a generic one. So what to do? So here, as part of it, Microsoft threat modeling process: identify the sets. Did you? So you have to create a list of documents which will include all the sets what you have, and then create architecture overview. That means the communications, like microservices will become a very complicated again, but you have to create a diagram, DFD, and all stuff like that, and complete diagram for the architecture, how it works and all. And then decompose the applications, and for each applications identify the threats. As I said, like if you are in a service SQL model, that means so app server, database server, login server, cache server, web server, CDN server, load balancers, different types of load balancer again. So these are the decomposed applications: service 1, service 2, service 3, service 4, like that, and identify the each threat for each, and the document the threat, and then rate them. So the P1, P2, P3, P4, like that. So when the development team will work on it, or testing team will test the application, they will focus on the P1, P2 and first, and then rest of the things. Okay, so to tool or not to tool depends on you. So commercial tools are available, free tools are available for create, which will help you to create a documentations and all, templates and all stuff like that. And it can be methodology specific. So for each methodology, whether it's pasta, try, stride, or anything else, also there's certain open source tools are also there. Some document, you can say template is also there. So it depends on your what you are looking for. It hands-on experience with the methodology, you know is like, if you have it, then you don't need a tool. You can directly go and start writing the documents for this. So look at this here. This is a screenshot of Microsoft threat modeling tool 2016. Okay, so how do you create a DFD diagram, which you see that here: OS process, thread process, kernel process, native application. And left side you see hundreds of generic processes are there. You can drag, drop, create a relationship, dependencies, and multiple different diagrams you'll create. And then after that, you will have to find out the thread for OS process, or HTTPS process, or data process, or something like that. So this is the tool which can help you to create a documentation in a better way. Can use mainly this threat modeling is mainly work on the stride. Mind it here. So multiple diagram you can create. Yeah. So setting the scope also is important for yourself. So Microsoft threat modeling process, which include again same thing: identify assets, create architecture diagram overview, decompose application, identify threats, document threats, and rate threats. Repeating again. And for this, some of the scenarios we are going to do that. For identify the set, like email address database is one set, CMS user database another, content database, web server database, database server, mail server. These are the sets actually. So what is the scope, what is the out of scope, you have to mention in the documents. So email address is a scope, or web server out of scope. So this kind of documents you'll create in scope, out of scope, and accordingly you will work on it. Identifying the sets, this is the second phase you have to do here. Okay, identify the sets. So decide upon level of details, make list of all assets, document in scope and out of scope item is needed. Drawing data flow diagrams, so which I will show you one of the Microsoft tool to do that. So again, you have to design proper documents, diagrams, communicate how system works, and the problem follow the data which one relatively should be simple, can be reused for the other purposes and used with most threat modeling methodology. DFD is very important for you. So again, if you have not studied DFD, go back to the semester 1 books, and that will help you. So yeah, DFD, which include process, data flow, data store. These are the icons for DFD. This is one of the example of DFD, and these are the different assets, the flow, and which is important, which is not important. You can find out, and which is not a part of scope, which is a part of the scope. You can list out all this stuff and do the practice. So creating architectural overview, yeah, diagram level should match items in scope. It should be proper representation. Identify what application does. Identify the technology. Diagram is first output. Again, coming back to the decomposing and identifying the threats. So analyzing the targets, different targets, which includes input validation, authentication, authorizations, configuration management, some sensitive data, personal data, session management, cryptography, parameter manipulations, exception management, auditing and logging, and so on. So you are going to decompose the application, which is a phase 3, the one which you see that process 3. And after that, identifying and documenting the threats. So for this, you can use stride. So here for this is the one, identifying the threat. For this, you can use the stride model, and this is a classification model. So what kind of threat you have coming under spoofing, tampering, and so on. So you can classify spoofing, which includes the pretending to become someone else. So you can set in the header, cookies header, administrator yes, though you are not. So authentication cookies can be spoofed. Tampering, modifying something, include traffic lacks integrity checks. Repudiation means claiming that you were not responsible. Database lack audit trails and stuff like that. Information disclosure, providing information to someone not authorized. Unauthorized access to the email database. A DDoS attack, which is denial of service, not allowing others to use the resources. Application lacks throttling. Elevations of privileges, performing actions they should not be allowed to, or missing, unauthorized authorization check. So this is again, you will create a DFD for this. Okay, read, store, read, write, all this thing you will do that. Okay, so techniques to find the threat. So stride is the one. There's many attack libraries are available. A lot of open source, but mostly paid softwares are there. Attack trace and desist. What is a desist? Desist include dispute, elevation of privileges, spoofing, information disclosure, service denial, and tampering. So here these are the stride is the most popular one, but you should also see, if you have a time, you can go through this model also, desist. But stride is the most popular one. Okay, so what are the threat documents you should have it? So create a target, which application process, attack techniques, forging a cookies, countermeasures, user strong values, and things like that. So last one, which is rating the threats. So how do you rate the threats? So in this case, I think one of the tools which you have already gone through, and that is SonarQube. And you might have seen that wherever the issues which you have, they have a priorities also, like ranking also, whether it's a major, minor, and so on. So yes, rating threats, be open about classification system, used for repetitive classification system. Dread is one of the model you can see. Ops risk rating methodology also you can use it. CBSS also you can use it for rating it. In SonarQube we are using OWASP. Okay, so that is a remember things. Dread means damage potential, reproducibility, exploitability, affected users, and discoverability. These are the 5 principles which you have. You can explore that dread model also. Forging the cookies. Here, example for the dread model is, let's say someone is forging the cookie, so which can be high and so on. Based on that, you have a ranking for this. Document threats. This is one of the use cases. and you can give the numbers for each different kind of problems and count at the end of it. So yeah, so in order to understand this, you have to setting the scope of work, threat, creating architectural overview, decomposing the application, follow, identify the threats using strides. You can explore other stuff, other tools also, and models also. Documenting threats, writing threats, use the list of threats. These are the things which you are going to do. Now, after that, how can we improve the threat modeling? So let me tell you here, these are the so open framework. Anyone can define in any ways actually. You say you did nothing, but you see, still you can say you follow the stride, and you did everything, and still there is a ways to improve that model. Okay, so how do we improve the threat modeling? So Benjamin Franklin says, "Tell me and I forgot, teach me and I remember, invoke me and I learn, involve me and I learn." So this is something you have to do. So what you have to do? Involve everyone in your team. Don't act very smart in a simple way. Don't act very smart like you are a DevSecOps guys, you are a security guys, and you alone can do everything. Involve everyone, and then you can improve the threat modeling. Okay, so it's not like you are going to write thousand pages of documents. No, everyone has to contribute as per their skill set, as per their scope, as per their expertise, and things like that. So here, documentation and diagrams are sensitive, so make sure that they are properly protected. Okay, support and adoption can be tricky, so focus threat modeling around people that will participate. Leverage existing processes. Invite more stakeholder than just compliance and security team. Executive support is important. That means management. Generate matrices. In SonarQube, we are getting the matrices. Encourage discussion between the teams. So these are some of the ways which you can improve the threat modeling. Quality and quantities. So 100% of accurate models are impossible. Model tries to predict behavior. Remember, only predict behavior. Any threat model is better than none. Initial process is more important than outcome. And remember, the goal is to reduce the risk. So if you think you design the threat model and you are done with the security, implementing the security for application assets or whatever it is, then it's a wrong thing. It's just a model. Again, require lots of efforts to implement and then practice, improve, share, and so on. Scope, creep can happen. So set scope and boundaries beforehand. Document decision and assumptions. Please make sure you write well. Start with a small, generalize in the beginning. That's what I said, right? I remember we started with the 2 to 3 documents and end up with the 500 pages of documents within our 2 years or something. So yeah, start small and generalize in the beginning. During the brainstorming, cap time and per thread. Okay, so this is something which you have to do. Generic issues with threat modeling. So which are the generic issues? So follow, treat vulnerabilities, bugs. Not everything need to be fixed. Some of the practices: reuse existing documentation and list. Tools can be constrained. It is a process. Treat it like one. Keep it simple as possible, and more people might try it. Okay, so this is the some of the practices using how you can improve the threat modeling. So threat modeling helps reducing the risk. Don't underestimate the threat modeling, but don't overestimate it either. See what works for your organization, embed it as a recurring process, and at last, practice makes perfect. So overall, what I'm trying to tell you here is very simple. First, find out what is your approach: application centric, asset centric, attacker centric. And for each approach, there are certain methodology we have it. You find out which one is fit for you, your organization, and so on. So some of the methodology which is like try, pasta, and tried, stride also with the Microsoft, tools, Microsoft framework tools, and a few more models which we discuss. So decide that and see that which is useful for you, and how can you start implementing. Remember that this is all about the discussion, sharing the knowledge, keep it document in a nice way. DFD, use the DFD a lot, and the process, the one which we discuss. Is it making sense for all of you?
Yeah, Rajesh. I just have this one question. Uh, what type of methodologies exist for attacker-centric approach?
Yeah.
I
So
need
there
to
is
know
a
that.
so attacker centric approach. See some of the process which you can think of it. First of all, you have to you have to think in that way. Methodology means just some of the practices
Hmm.
which might find out the weakness and vulnerability in your system. So I'm not able to recall exactly some models right now, but yeah, I will just after this call I'll tell you some of the open source tool which will help you to list out the guidelines for the attacker approach actually.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so there are few models are available and many multiple open source tool and paid tools are also available. They say they claim that they are attacker centric approach, but it's very difficult to visualize. So the best things which we find out, what we do is create a use cases for penetration testing.
Hmm.
Penetration testing is one of the process. So you write a test cases for that, and that will become a model for uh, attacker centric. Yeah,
Attacker-centric. Yeah, kind of like red teaming, blue teaming, capturing the
yeah,
flag.
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
should come under, okay, attacker-centric, because
yeah,
you then have to think like an attacker and exploit the
yeah,
system. Okay,
yeah.
got it, got it.
Okay. Any other questions, guys?
Nope, I'm good.